The flashing red and blue lights painted my garage door, an eerie contrast against the quiet night. I was standing barefoot in my backyard, still in pajama pants, when Officer Daniels, a man built like a refrigerator, stepped onto my lawn. He looked at me the way mall cops look at teenagers loitering near the food court, like he was just waiting for an excuse. "Sir, you're trespassing," he said, adjusting his belt like he was preparing for a showdown. I blinked at him. On my own property? According to Daniels, the Homeowners Association, aka the neighborhood dictatorship, claimed jurisdiction over my house. And since I had allegedly violated their bylaws, I was now an unauthorized occupant. I let out a sharp laugh, the kind of laugh that happens when reality punches you in the face so hard you wonder if you're on a prank show. "Let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "I bought this house. I pay the mortgage. I maintain the yard. And now, you're telling me I don't own it?" Before Daniels could answer, I heard her voice. That grating, self-important, clipboard-clutching voice. "That's correct, officer," Karen Worthington, the HOA president, said, stepping into the glow of the squad car's headlights. And just like that, everything made sense. Karen, the self-appointed queen of suburban oppression. She stood there, smug as ever, wearing an expensive cardigan and holding a clipboard like it contained the secrets of the universe. I should have known she'd try something like this. It started small. Passive-aggressive letters about my trash bins being visually offensive. A fine because my lawn was too green. Another for my mailbox not being HOA approved, even though it came with the house. At first, I thought she was just a nosy neighbor with too much time on her hands. But Karen wasn't just nosy, she was dangerous. 2 weeks ago, I got an official HOA notice in the mail. It claimed my house was under administrative review due to non-compliance. At the time, I laughed it off. I figured it was just another Karen tantrum. I should have known better. Because as of last night, the HOA had legally classified my house as managed inventory. Translation: Karen just decided my home belonged to her, and now she had the police backing her up. "Jake," Karen said, in a tone dripping with fake sympathy, "just comply with the rules. We have standards to maintain in this community." I clenched my jaw. "By stealing people's homes?" Karen gasped dramatically, like I had just insulted her honor. "That's a very strong word," she said, flipping through her clipboard. I turned to Officer Daniels. "You seriously don't see how insane this is?" Daniels sighed. "Sir, I just enforce the law. If the HOA has legal standing, you'll have to take it up in court. For now," he added, "you need to vacate the premises." "Vacate? My own home?" I let out a sharp exhale, rubbing my temples. "Let's slow this down," I said. "I live here. I pay for this place. How can I be trespassing on something I own?" Karen leaned in, lowering her voice. "You didn't pay the HOA compliance fees, did you?" I frowned. "What compliance fees?" Karen feigned shock like I had just admitted to robbing a bank. "Oh dear," she sighed. "You didn't read the addendum in last month's newsletter?" At this point, I was convinced I had wandered into some twisted psychological experiment designed to test human patience. "Officer," Karen said sweetly, turning back to Daniels, "I believe we've given him ample warning." And just like that, Officer Daniels pulled out his handcuffs. I took a step back, holding up my hands. "Whoa. Are you seriously about to arrest me?" Daniels gave me the same tired look I imagined he gave people who argued about parking tickets. "Sir, turn around." This was it, my personal rock bottom, handcuffed in front of my own home, while my nosy neighbors peeked from their windows, whispering, like this was the best episode of reality TV they'd ever seen. Karen grinned victoriously. "Karen, I swear, if you don't—" "Don't what, Jake?" she interrupted, tilting her head like a Disney villain. "You should have just followed the rules." Then from across the street, Old Man Riley shuffled onto his porch. Riley, my 80-year-old neighbor, was wearing his usual bathrobe and slippers, holding his coffee mug that read, "I hate mornings." He took one look at me, one look at the cop, and let out a wheezy chuckle. "Well, son," he called out, sipping his coffee, "I told you when you moved in. Karen's got more power than the mayor." I glared at him. "Not helping, Riley." "Just saying," he muttered. The squad car door swung open, and as I was guided inside, a realization hit me. This wasn't just about HOA rules. This wasn't about grass length or mailboxes. This was something bigger. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was orchestrating something. And I had just become her latest victim. But what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that I wasn't going down without a fight. She may have sent the cops after me. She may have humiliated me in front of the whole neighborhood. But she just made a very, very big mistake. Sitting in a holding cell for trespassing on my own property was the kind of absurdity I never thought I'd experience. The metal bench was cold, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and my only company was a guy who smelled like he hadn't showered since the Obama administration. He gave me a slow, knowing nod. "What are you in for?" he asked. I sighed. "Living in my own house." He let out a low whistle. "Damn." "Ho!" I turned to him, wide-eyed. "How did you—" "They're the worst, man," he muttered. "Got kicked out of my apartment because I had the wrong color curtains." I rubbed my temples. I was living in a nightmare. After what felt like hours, Officer Daniels finally returned, looking like he regretted his life choices. "Let's go," he grumbled, unlocking my cell. I followed him through the station, expecting to see Karen waiting, outside, smirking. Instead, I was met by my lawyer, Susan Langley. Susan was 5'3", wore power suits sharper than a knife, and had the general attitude of someone who could dismantle a person with just words. She was flipping through a stack of papers, shaking her head like she was personally offended by the universe. "This," she muttered, "might be the dumbest case I've ever taken. And I once defended a guy who got arrested for stealing a shopping cart full of bananas." I exhaled. Glad to know I'm in elite company. Susan shot me a look, then turned to Officer Daniels. "What exactly is the charge here?" she asked. "I need to hear someone say it out loud so I can confirm I haven't walked onto the set of a prank show." Daniels rubbed his temple. "The HOA filed a complaint that Mr. Mitchell was illegally occupying a property under their jurisdiction." Susan scoffed. "Let me get this straight." She flipped through her paperwork. "My client, who owns his home, was arrested for being inside. His home." Daniels looked like he wanted to quit his job. "That's what the paperwork says." Susan took a deep breath, clearly trying not to explode from sheer frustration. "Right. Well, let's start with the fact that this entire thing is legally unsound. And second," she narrowed her eyes, "unless you want a lawsuit against the Department for Wrongful Arrest, I suggest you let my client go before I turn this into a media circus." Daniels let out the longest sigh of his life and waved me toward the desk sergeant. Moments later, my cuffs were off, and I was walking out of the station with Susan at my side. "You owe me," she said, shoving her papers into her bag. "And by that, I mean I'm billing you for every second of this nonsense." I sighed. "I'll pay you double if you can get Karen thrown in jail." Susan smirked. "I like the way you think. The moment I pulled into my driveway, I knew something was wrong. My front lawn was littered with papers, violation notices, foreclosure warnings, and the worst one, a letter stating that the HOA had put my house up for auction. I snatched up the letter, scanning the text in disbelief. Notice of transfer of property ownership. No way. I stormed across the street to the HOA office, barely resisting the urge to kick down the door. Inside, Karen was sitting behind her ridiculously pristine desk, sipping tea like she hadn't just tried to steal my entire life. She looked up, feigning surprise. "Oh, Jake, back so soon?" I slammed the foreclosure notice onto her desk. "What the hell is this?" Karen adjusted her glasses, scanning the notice like it was nothing. "Oh dear," she murmured. "It looks like your property has been placed under the HOA's possession due to unpaid fees." I narrowed my eyes. "I don't owe you anything," Karen tutted. "Well, that's not entirely true. You see, last month we implemented a new policy." She tapped the paper. "Failure to comply with multiple citations results in an automatic transfer of ownership." I felt my blood pressure skyrocket. "You can't just steal my house, Karen," she gasped dramatically, placing a hand over her heart. "Steal?" "Jake, we're just enforcing community standards. We have to ensure our neighborhood maintains its value." I leaned in. "You're running a scam." Karen smiled, completely unbothered. "Call it what you want. But as of right, now you're technically trespassing again." I clenched my fists, but I knew better than to let her bait me into doing something stupid. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked out, pulling out my phone as I went. The call rang twice before my neighbor, Riley, answered. "Riley." I took a deep breath. "I need a favor," Riley chuckled. "Tell me it involves screwing over Karen." "Oh, it absolutely does." 30 minutes later, I was sitting in Riley's living room, surrounded by stacks of old HOA documents, legal filings, an alarmingly large bottle of whiskey. Riley, despite looking like he had been retired since the Civil War, was shockingly sharp when it came to paperwork. "I knew that woman was crooked," he muttered, flipping through a thick folder. "She's been pulling this scam for years. Takes over homes, sells them at a premium, and pockets the profit." I frowned. "Hasn't anyone tried to stop her?" Riley scoffed. "You think people here have the energy for that? Most folks either move away or give up. The last guy who fought back," he shook his head, "ended up mysteriously violating so many rules he had to sell his place just to pay off the fines." I exhaled sharply. Karen was worse than I thought. Then I smirked. "Then we need to catch her in the act." Riley grinned, eyes twinkling. "Now you're talking." Next morning, we put the plan in motion. Step 1. Find undeniable evidence of Karen's fraud. Step 2. Expose her publicly, so even her cronies couldn't cover it up. Step 3. Take back my house. But Karen wasn't going down without a fight, and I was about to learn just how far she was willing to go. Karen had been running a scam for years, seizing homes, selling them at a profit, and burying homeowners under so many bogus violations that they had no choice but to pay up or get out. Well, not this time. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to bury her. Riley cracked open another dusty old HOA filing cabinet, grumbling under his breath. "She's been at this for at least a decade," he muttered. I leaned over, flipping through documents. Every page told the same disgusting story. Homeowners fined into oblivion over violations that didn't exist. Properties foreclosed under fake policies. Karen personally pocketing thousands in administrative fees. Susan, my lawyer, sat at the table, typing furiously on her laptop. "This isn't just a scam," she muttered. "This is organized fraud." Riley snorted. "Organized? Karen runs this thing like a damn mafia." I nodded. "Then let's take her down like one." Karen was careful. She never put things in writing unless she absolutely had to, which meant we needed to catch her saying the quiet part out loud. So, I sent her an email. A fake email. I posed as a luxury real estate developer, offering to buy up properties in Oak Ridge Estates. But there was a catch. The homes needed to be cleared of problem homeowners first. I didn't have to wait long. Karen took the bait. Riley and I sat across the street, watching her through the HOA office window as she read the email on her phone. Her expression shifted from curiosity to pure, unfiltered greed. "She's gonna bite," Riley muttered, watching her start typing. I smirked. "That's the idea." Karen wasted no time. The next evening she called a private HOA board meeting. No homeowners allowed, only her inner circle of enforcers. Too bad for her. Riley had a plan. He showed up anyway, pretending to be a confused old man who thought it was bingo night. Nobody questioned him. Nobody noticed the tiny recording device in his jacket pocket. Karen stood at the front of the room, clutching her ever-present clipboard. She had no idea she was being recorded. She smiled at the board members, her voice dripping with fake professionalism. "We have a unique opportunity," she said. "A major real estate firm wants to buy out homes in the neighborhood, but first we need to clear out a few problem residents." I could practically hear Riley's grin from across the street as he listened in through his earpiece. Karen kept going. "We'll just increase their fines, revoke privileges, and if necessary, call the police again." She chuckled. "They'll give up eventually. They always do." A murmur of agreement filled the room. Then Karen delivered the final nail in her own coffin. "This is big money, people," she said, "and if we play it right, we'll all get a nice payout." Riley walked out of that meeting grinning like a kid on Christmas. "We got her," he whispered. The next morning, Susan sent the recording to every major news outlet in the state. Riley leaked it to every resident in the neighborhood. By noon, the entire town knew what was going on. Social media exploded. Corrupt HOA president caught on tape, plotting to steal homes. The HOA tried to do damage control. They claimed it was a misunderstanding. But the damage was done, and then came the final blow. The police arrived, but not for me. For Karen. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching as two uniformed officers approached Karen's door. She answered, confused. Then she saw the warrant. Her face drained of color. "Karen Worthington," the lead officer said. "You're under arrest for fraud, misappropriation of funds, and illegal property seizures." Karen stumbled back. This is a mistake," she stammered. The cop wasn't buying it. He turned her around, pulling out the handcuffs. Click. Karen whipped her head around, locking eyes with me. I gave her the biggest, smuggest grin of my life. "This isn't over," she hissed. I sipped my coffee. "Oh, it absolutely is." The squad car door slammed shut, and just like that, Karen was gone. Karen was gone, but her damage, that was still here. Even with her in handcuffs, the HOA board scrambled to hold on to their fake empire. Too bad for them, I wasn't done yet. The moment Karen's arrest hit the news, the entire neighborhood erupted. People who had stayed silent for years, too afraid of Karen's ridiculous rules, finally spoke up. And let me tell you, they were pissed. She fined me $500 for parking in my own driveway. I had to sell my house because of her fake citations. She towed my car because it was the wrong shade of blue. Within 24 hours, the HOA office was swarmed with angry homeowners. They weren't here to file complaints. They were here to end this. And I was leading the charge. The remaining HOA board members, Karen's cronies, held a last-ditch meeting to save themselves. The same people who had backed Karen's corrupt rules were now backpedaling hard. I decided to crash. With their little party, I strolled in, fresh cup of coffee in hand, and took a seat right in the front row. Karen's vice president, Mark, wiped the sweat off his forehead. I think we should, suspend all fines until we can, review." "Too late for that, Mark," he said, leaning forward. He swallowed. "Jake, we're trying to—" I slapped a fat stack of papers on the table. "I just filed a class action lawsuit against the HOA." Dead silence. Mark looked like he was about to pass out. "What?" 35. "Homeowners," I continued, "all suing you for fraud, extortion, and illegal property seizures." The room erupted in whispers. Mark's voice cracked. We don't have the money to fight that." I took a slow sip of my coffee. Exactly. After years of Karen's tyranny, the homeowners finally had a choice: dissolve the HOA entirely or go bankrupt trying to fight me in court. It wasn't even a contest. The vote passed 97-3. The HOA was officially dead. The next morning I stepped outside and looked around my neighborhood. No more HOA warning signs, no more fake citations, no more power-hungry Karen. For the first time in years, the place actually felt like home, and my house, it was legally mine again. Thanks to Susan's legal work, the courts nullified all fraudulent property transfers. I had won. A week later, Riley and I were grilling burgers in my backyard when Susan walked in, waving a document. "Good news," she said. "Karen's been officially charged with fraud." Riley grinned. "And how's jail treating her?" Susan smirked. "Let's just say she's not adjusting well." She handed me a newspaper clipping. "Former HOA president attempts to tucker fine prison guards for improper uniform compliance, ends up in solitary." I laughed so hard I almost dropped my burger. Some people never learn. The HOA was gone. Karen was rotting in jail. And for the first time in years, my neighborhood actually felt like a place I wanted to live. But I wasn't done yet, because I had one last move to make. Karen's HOA wasn't the only corrupt one out there. These power-hungry neighborhood overlords had been pulling scams all over the country. So I teamed up with Susan and started a public campaign. We exposed how HOAs weaponized fake fines. We pushed for stronger homeowner protection laws, and we got national media attention. A few months later, the state government passed a bill banning abusive HOA foreclosure tactics. That meant no HOA could ever pull Karen's scam again. And that was better than any revenge. A few months after Karen's downfall, Riley and I were sitting on my front porch, watching as the neighborhood finally relaxed. Kids were playing outside without getting fined for excessive noise. People painted their houses whatever color they wanted. No one had to hide their trash bins like criminals. "Damn," Riley muttered, sipping his whiskey. "Feels like the first peaceful day since the Civil War." I laughed. "Not bad, huh?" He leaned back. "So, what's next?" I smirked. "Now," I said. "Now I sit back and enjoy never dealing with an HOA again." And for the first time since moving in, I actually believed it. One morning, Susan showed up at my house, grinning. "You're gonna love this," she said, handing me a letter. I opened it and nearly spit out my coffee. Karen had sent me a letter from prison. I started reading. "Dear Jake, I hope you're happy. Thanks to you, I've been wrongfully imprisoned in a place full of criminals where no one follows the rules and people don't respect authority. It's absolute chaos. I tried implementing a new set of policies to bring order to this place, but the guards won't let me enforce them. This is an outrage. I demand you fix this immediately. Sincerely, Karen Worthington." I burst out laughing. Karen had tried to start an HOA in prison, and even the inmates hated her. "Think she learned her lesson?" Susan smirked. I shook my head. Not a chance. But at least, for the first time ever, she was finally the one trapped under someone else's rules. And I was finally, completely free. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe for more awesome content. Don't forget to tap the bell icon to stay updated. Your support means the world.